Hey there, it's Lara here with this week's Witchy Wednesday astrology video for the week of September 19th to 25th, 2018. So welcome, thanks for being here. I have a sore throat here, so I'm trying my best, and this is my third take of this video, so I've been talking a lot, and hopefully I'll get through this with my tea. My daughter is sick and has graciously shared her germs with me. So um, there's a lot to talk about this week, actually, more so than I realized at first. And I have chosen to focus a lot on the full moon in Aries that's coming up on the 24th because it's fairly significant. And I'm going to speak to each of the signs as I have been doing at the end of the video, and this time in relation to where the full moon is falling for you. And I've done it in a bit of a different way. I have some questions for you to consider, um, to reflect on at this time. And so you might want to pause the video and grab something to write with. Also, I want to say that one of my gracious, amazing viewers, Janine, thank you, has been putting the timestamps on the videos the last couple of times, so that if you want to just skip ahead to your sign, you can do that. Although I really encourage you to stick around for this intro part because it's relevant to everybody, right? And but if you do, and Janine, please don't feel obligated to do that if you don't have time. I so appreciate it, and I totally understand if that's not something consistently have time for. But if that is the case and you do skip ahead, then you'll see the timestamps below, and you can click to whatever sign you're listening for. But please stick around for this intro here. So I'm a little out of sorts because I'm not feeling well, and also because I've repeated myself a few times here, and I want to make sure that I don't forget anything important that I want to tell you in this go around. But I think that largely the theme for this week it's about some kind of identity crisis, and also about restoring balance somewhere, right? We are moving into Libra season, and we are going to have the autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere here on the 22nd, on Saturday. And that is when the sun officially moves into Libra. And it marks the moment of the year where everything is in perfect balance. Light and dark are equal. The day and the night is of equal length, right? This is the witches or pagans celebration of Mabon, right? It's a harvest celebration. It is a time to pause and reflect on the harvest, and have we, are we reaping what we've sown? And guaranteed we are. We're reaping what we've sown, but I guess the better question would be, are we happy with what we've sown, and what we are now harvesting as a result at this point in the year? Or do we need to revisit that and reflect on that, and consider how we may, foster our future differently than we have, so that next year, when this time, harvest time, comes around, we are in true alignment, right, with what we want in our lives and who we want to be. So happy birthday, Libra. If you are a Libra sun sign, we're coming into your time, right? The sun is moving out of Virgo and moving into Libra on the 22nd. Mercury is also moving out of Virgo and into Libra, and that's happening on the 21st. So our thinking and our communications will have the flavor of Libra. So, there'll be a focus on negotiating and diplomacy and mediation, on weighing all sides, right, before we make a decision, which can sometimes be good, but if we overdo it, and then it can lead to us just being paralyzed and not being able to make a decision, right? It can also be a little bit, we can be too people pleasing or passive aggressive at this time too. So, but generally, Libra season is about balance and harmony, and really weighing all sides. So, before I speak to the full moon, I want to talk about one more thing, and that is that Chiron, known as the wounded healer in astrology, is about to tip back into the sign of Pisces. So in April, Chiron moved into Aries after it had been in Pisces for like 8 years. And it moved into Aries, where it started to draw our attention to the healing of our identity in some way, right? And the wounds we have surrounding our core identity. Aries is the sign of the self. So we've got a bit of a flavor since April of what that's going to look like and feel like for each of us. And now Chiron's tipping back into Pisces, and it's doing that to sort of, just take care of any unfinished business in regards to our healing in whatever area of life Pisces sits for us, whatever house Pisces is in for each of us. So I have 2 separate videos that I did on this back in the spring that I did on Chiron. They've been well received. And if you haven't seen them yet, then I encourage you to go watch those. It's a good time to do that. Or if you have watched them, it's a good time to revisit them, especially the one on Chiron's transit moving into Aries, right? So it'll retrograde back into Pisces on September 25th, and then we'll stay there and turn direct in December, and then start moving forward again, and eventually make its way back into Aries, where it will stay for the long haul for like about 8 years or so. And that will be a time of really digging into this notion of healing of our identity, right? And our wounding, any woundings we have around our core identity. So, it's a good time to think about where we're at as far as that process goes. And are we waffling on our commitment to ourselves, or do we need to recommit to ourselves in some way, right? Are we second guessing ourselves or questioning our worthiness? Do we have a balanced approach to the healing of the self? So those are some questions for you. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have questions for each of the signs as I speak to the full moon that's happening in Aries on the 24th, which is Monday. And I guess before I launch into that, I'm going to show you the chart. Excuse me. So this is the chart that I've drawn up, which is for the full moon in Aries on the 24th. So here's the sun that will be in Libra at that point in time. Right now it's still in Virgo, but we'll tip into Libra, as will Mercury, right? We'll be in Libra at that point. And if you can see these red lines going across the chart. That's an opposition to, we have the moon, which will be in Aries by then, and Chiron in Aries. And those two are meeting up and having a conversation called a conjunction that impacts this full moon. And another thing that impacts the full moon is Saturn up here in Capricorn will be squaring, making a 90-degree angle to both the sun and the moon. So I'll speak to what that means as well. Sorry, I have many notes here, and I just want to make sure that I don't forget anything. So full moons, as you've heard me say before, if you've been around here before, are always when the sun and the moon are opposite each other in the sky. So in this case, sun will be in Libra and the moon will be across the sky in Aries. And, you know, full moons they represent often some kind of culmination or coming to fruition or realization. And oftentimes this can be something that we got an inkling of or began around the time of the new moon, the previous new moon in this case, which was in Virgo on the 9th. Full moons also usually highlight balance or lack of balance in some way in whatever two areas of the chart, right? The sun and the moon are located on that axis. And it's a good time to consider where does balance need to be restored, right? In our lives at this point. And full moons are always a time of heightened emotions as well. Moon rules our emotions, right? And so heightened emotions can draw our attention to where something has reached a tipping point or a crisis and needs to be dealt with. This full moon in particular is really about how we are honoring our relationships, and our relationship to ourself, our relationship to others, to the world around us. Aries is about our physical body. It's about our instinct. It's about our drive and our will and our courage and our leadership, right? So those themes are highlighted right now. And around the time of this full moon, we may have some salt rubbed in our wounds, the wounds specifically that we have around our identity, and that's because the moon is having this close conversation with Chiron, right? We also may run into some obstacles in our way of thinking and some rigidity there, you know, or in regards to our identity or you know, our efforts to get in touch with that in some way. And that's because Saturn is making this difficult conversation, right, with the sun and the moon. And so the good news is, though, that there is an opportunity because of Mars having a conversation with this full moon called a sextile, conversation of opportunity. So there's an opportunity to move past any obstacles that might be in our way, right? And to heal our identity through balancing those polarities. So those opposite points in the chart. And I'll speak to what those are for each sign as I go through that. But one more thing before I get there. I see this as our emotional needs versus our physical needs or our material needs being highlighted, right? And it's also, I think, important to note that it's a time of really paying attention to our mental wellness right now. Take care of your mental health during this time, because there can be this tendency to be a little bit woe is me, you know, and if you're prone to despair and that kind of thing, that could be triggered a little bit right now. But realize that this too shall pass, right? And see this as an opportunity for growth and learning, and the opportunity to harness that courageous Mars energy and be the hero of our lives rather than falling prey to victim mentality kind of thing. So this full moon is going to have an impact most significantly on the cardinal signs, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And any planets or points that we have from about 0 to 4 degrees of any of those signs. But everybody will be impacted in some way, shape, or form, right? It'll just be to varying degrees and in different ways. So I want to start by saying that just in case you do choose to jump forward to your sign, if that opportunity presents itself, um, there is a book called The Desire Map. I don't think I mentioned this yet. Again, I'm getting mixed up by what I said in previous takes, and it's by Danielle Laporte, who's a Canadian woman who I'm a big fan of, and I actually used to facilitate Desire Map workshops, and this process is really, really powerful. And I think this is a really good time to do that work right now, around this full moon and around the time of the equinox, moving into the fall. So if that's something that piques your interest, then look that up and take a look and see, if you think that might be helpful to you. But it's really about getting in touch with our core desired feelings, right? Who do we want to be? This notion of our true identity. Who do we want to be? How do we want to feel? So I'm going to start obviously with Aries, because Aries, this is your full moon happening in the first house of the self. And the first house is home to Aries. Opposite the seventh house, which is the house of other, right? So this axis is highlighted for you right now. And this could be some kind of health concern highlighted, or some kind of, maybe even getting some closure in that area, finding out, getting answers about something that, you were concerned about. It could also be a good old fashioned identity crisis in the truest sense of the word. Like, who am I, right? And who am I in relation to others would be a question for you right now. What is my role? How am I perceived? And how do I want to be perceived? How do I desire to be perceived? How do I desire to feel? Um, you know, what are my core desires? So it's a good time to summon the courage to really address these questions, right? And really come to terms with where we're at in this process of the healing of our identity. And granted, we're all very early in this process. Chiron hasn't been in Aries for very long right now, but this is a good time to reflect on those. Just had to do a quick pause there because my son came in from school and came to visit me. Didn't know I was recording, so sorry about that. But I was finished with Aries and moving on to Pisces now. And Pisces, this full moon is happening in your second house of your personal resources and what you value and your self-worth, opposite the eighth house of other people's resources. So some questions here to ask yourself, right, is they surround this these concepts of my resources versus others' resources, and the need for balance there. So Pisces, some questions for you to ask are: do I know my worth? Do I have the courage to ask for what I'm worth? Am I giving too much of myself, too much of my resources? Or am I taking too many resources from others? Is there an imbalance there, right? This may also be that there could be some money coming to you, that's owed to you, or perhaps that, on the flip side, money you need to pay out, some kind of debt that needs repaying. It's a good time to consider what is my value? What do I value, right? What are my core values? The Desire Map book can help you with that I mentioned. Are you valuing yourself? Or are you allowing others to determine what you're worth, right? To determine your value. Is that coming from an external source, or are you seeking validation from an external source? So those are some questions for you, Pisces. Aquarius, this is happening in your third house of your communications and your thinking and the messages that are exchanged back and forth. Opposite the ninth house. So the ninth house is about our worldview and our about what we can learn from that which is foreign to us, cultures, places, people, and it's about our belief systems. So, Aquarius, how do you want to be perceived through your communication style? Are you getting your message across in a way that's in integrity with who you truly are? Is your message aligned with your true self? Are you letting someone else or others determine your worldview? Are you being heard, or are you being drowned out by somebody else? Is someone else or some other institution or person telling you how you should think and what you should think? Is your everyday communication in alignment with the messages you're delivering out into the world, perhaps via social media, for example? What do you really think about who you are? And this can even be in relation to family members, like cousins and siblings, people in your neighborhood kind of thing. Not so much in terms of parents or siblings, but those other kinds of familial relationships. So that can be highlighted for you right now, Aquarius. And those are some questions to ask. Capricorn, this is happening in your fourth house of your home and your family and your roots and your ancestry and your emotional security needs. Opposite your 10th house, right, which is more public, your public persona, your career life, your career ambitions. So, Capricorn, are you getting your needs met at home? What is your role at home versus at work? And is one of those outweighing the other at present? Do you need to restore balance in those two areas to bring yourself back into alignment, right, with your true identity? What do you desire on that continuum of home versus, private versus public kind of thing? Does your home life truly reflect who you are? Are you leading by example at home? Are you someone different? This is sort of another way of wording the same question. Are you someone different at work than you are at home? And just very, on a simple level, your place of living may be highlighted at this time, even in some way. Moving on to Sagittarius, this is happening in your fifth house. So your house of your creative self-expression and any children that you are involved with, including your own, and how you sort of radiate out into the world and what you find pleasure in, right? The fun things. So some questions for you to ponder, Sagittarius, are: who are you and who do you desire to be in terms of your creative self-expression? Who are you and who do you desire to be in terms of your children or any children you are associated with? How do you enjoy life? Are you enjoying life? Is that part of your identity? Is any of that out of alignment with your hopes and visions for the future? Are you desiring connection with a group or your tribe kind of thing? But there's something out of alignment there that's not allowing you to land where you belong, in that regard. Who do you want to be seen as creatively, right? Who do you want to be seen as, a parent or somebody who works with kids? What do you want to be recognized for? And lastly, just basically, what is your creative identity? Does that feel aligned to you? Scorpio, this is happening in your 6th house of your daily routine and opposite your 12th house of your those things you're more sort of, unconscious of, and your spiritual life. So, Scorpio, some questions for you to consider here are: who are you in your day to day life? Are your spiritual needs met? Are they being met, right? Or are they being drowned out by the daily grind kind of thing, overshadowed? You know, um, what do you need to do to fulfill your innermost needs? What do you need to do to feel a sense of spiritual connection? Are you sabotaging your wellness with bad habits and unconscious behaviors and addictions of sort? Is what you do behind closed doors ultimately serving your wellness and in alignment with who you wish to be? And lastly, on a simple level, this could be like a crisis in terms of, um, work. Like if you work at a hospital or a long-term care facility or prison, any place like that, you know, is that occupying too much of your daily life at present for whatever reason, right? And are you feeling out of balance as a result of that? Okay, Libra. This is happening in your 7th house of one-to-one relationships, opposite your 1st house of the self. So, some questions for you, Libra. Are your relationships out of balance right now? Are you perhaps being too accommodating in your relationships? Or are you resentful, and are you being passive aggressive, right? Because you don't want to upset the apple cart kind of thing. Um, are the needs of others ultimately overtaking or overshadowing your own needs? Are the relationships you have in alignment with who you truly are or who you want to be? Do you need to cultivate new relationships that allow you to be more authentic? Who are you in relationship to yourself? Do you like who you are? Do you know who you are, in relation to yourself? Like, do you know who you are when you're not in relationship, basically? Are your relationships defining you? So that's for you, Libra. And Virgo, you're next. Virgo, this is happening in your 8th house of your, the resources you share with others, other people's resources, your intimate connections with others, and your those things that we kind of tend to keep a secret or hidden, that maybe we don't really want other people to see or know, right? So, Virgo, some questions for you here. Are you afraid to be intimately seen and acknowledged by another? Are you too self reliant or self contained and not allowing others in? That can be a very Virgoan thing. Um, are you afraid to rely on others, right? Are you afraid you rely too much on others? Are you comparing your worth, in relation to others? Are you afraid to step into your worth, Virgo? Is there some, money or resources owing you from others, or is there a debt that needs paying? Do you feel indebted to others, and how can you restore that balance? Who are you in your closest intimate relationships? What are you afraid to show or admit about yourself? Are there skeletons in your closet that are preventing you from being who you really are, right? And is it time to sort of face those, to let them out of the closet and to deal with them once and for all? So that's for you, Virgo. Leo, this is happening for you in your ninth house. And that's your house of your belief system and your worldview. And, um, you know, what you can learn from foreign people and cultures and places. From It's about higher education, teaching, learning, that kind of thing falls in this area. So Leo, excuse me. Does your philosophy or your belief system reflect who you truly are at this moment in time, or does it need an overhaul, right? Are you allowing yourself to be taught or to be open to other perspectives? Or are you so rigid in your outlook that you refuse to see things any other way, right? Is somebody perhaps, it could be like a teacher or a guru or even a religious organization, some kind of institution, perhaps, um, shaping your worldview too much kind of thing? Or are you refusing to be open to a different way of looking at the world? Um, Another thing to ponder is, what can other cultures or what can perhaps travel or other worldviews teach you about yourself right now? Who are you in the arena of anything having to do with teaching and learning, if that's relevant to you, and communication as well? Are you able to communicate communicate? Are you able to communicate clearly um, your own worldview, your own beliefs? Can you articulate that? Do you know what those are, and can you articulate what your beliefs are? Cancer, this is happening for you in your 10th house of your public persona and your career ambitions, your career life, who you are out there kind of thing, as opposed to in more privately, right? So some questions to consider at this time, Cancer, are: is your public persona aligned with your personal one? Who do you want to be seen as out in the world? Who do you want to be seen as in your career? Is your public image a true reflection of who you are? Are you acting in integrity in terms of your public and private life, right? So that could be like work and home. Is your career life dictating too much of who you are or who you think you need to be? Are you relying too much on outward appearances for your sense of emotional security? Those would be some good questions to ask yourself right now, and you can certainly add to that if something comes up for you. There also, just on a basic level, there may be a highlighting right now of traditional roles, mother, father, masculine, feminine, kind of thing. There may be an imbalance there, or some kind of crisis that needs addressing. Gemini, this is happening in your 11th house of groups and associations and your hopes and dreams for the future. So, Gemini, are the groups you are aligned with a true reflection of your most radiant self? Do you need to perhaps reconsider or rethink your alliances right now? Are your hopes and dreams for your future out of balance with who you are creatively or who you are as a parent, right? This is because this is opposite the house of creative self-expression and of children. Are you having fun and enjoying the groups that you're part of, the associations that you're part of, the friendship groups? Are you enjoying that? Or do you need to seek out groups that allow your true self to shine more? If you are sort of a creative type, do you need to find a place to showcase your work or a group that will support and encourage you? If you're a parent or somebody who works with children, are the groups you're part of aligned with your identity in that regard? Another question to ask would be, what is your identity in relation to the group or whatever groups you're involved with? Um, are you perhaps are you blending in too much right now? Being a bit of a sheep in a way, or and not allowing your true colors to shine? And if so, kind of, what's that about? Or do you feel that perhaps, you know, you're standing out too much in some regard, and that needs to be brought back into balance? So it's this whole idea of individuality versus being part of the group. And moving on, last but not least, Taurus, this is about this is happening, this full moon in Aries is happening in your 12th house. Again, it's the house of the subconscious, those things we're not consciously sort of aware of. It's about our spirituality as well. It's about how we can sabotage ourselves as well. And this is opposite your 6th house of your daily affairs, right? And your daily routines and tasks. So some questions for you to consider, Taurus, would be, what are your spiritual alignments? And when I say that, I'm not talking about religious affiliations, right? That's different. What are your spiritual alignments? Do you have a sense of who you are in a spiritual regard? Are you feeling a little bit lost at sea right now, or a little bit ungrounded, right? Are you adrift in escapism in some way and not grounded in your daily routines? Um, are your daily routines out of alignment with your higher self or your higher conscious? Um, right now, is that something that you're feeling is out of alignment? How can those two parts of your life and yourself be integrated and more aligned? Are you too focused perhaps on the spiritual sort of end of things and not taking care of your daily affairs? And you're not taking care of the day to day because there's too much sort of escapism going on. So following that, our bad habits or unconscious behaviors or even addictions taking over your daily life in some way? How can you balance your mental and physical health? Is your sense of service to a higher power making you neglect those that you serve on the day to day? Are you in denial about any self-sabotaging behaviors that you may have? So, really this is about what you can do to restore balance, to how you can bring your spiritual life and your day-to-day material practical life into alignment and into harmony. And just on a sort of mundane level too, it could be that you're having a lot of time or focus right now on spending a lot of time in an institution like a hospital or a prison or a long-term care facility or something along those lines. Whether that be because you work there in that kind of a setting, or somebody that is in one of those places, and there's a lot of your daily energy that's going into that, or perhaps it's you, right? There's a lot of your daily energy. So I'm hoping that was helpful to you, that those questions gave you some food for thought and something to chew on over the next little while. I would love to know what you thought. If you're willing to leave a comment below, that would be great. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you hadn't already done so. And my voice is failing a little here. So I'm going to sign off, and I really appreciate you being here, and I will talk to you next week. All right, take care. Bye-bye.